right? It's not one subject I might teach more than one subject. So I might teach one or more subjects, and in the process, I'm getting assessment from my students in form of feedback, and the feedback together says, okay, whether I'm doing well or not. And the feedback is a process that is generally continuous. Some institutions they collect once in the beginning of the semester, beginning and also end of the semester. Some institutions have started following pedagogy, saying that okay, will collect the feedback whenever there are exams. So let's take this test one, I'll collect a feedback, test two. So now the concept of feedback was collected. If you ask me 15 years back, okay, where we used to collect the feedback at the end of the semester, is now becoming a process which is a continuous feedback. This is a factor that is always taken as a way of teaching, is delivered in a right way. And together we also accept that, okay, the quality of education that we give back to the student is also good. Okay, this is the first thing that I'm trying to take it. When you say that you want to have a pedagogy in teaching, right, which is part of enforcing quality, the pedagogy of teaching has changed. If you take cases, also will accept that if you go back to blackboard teaching, now people will say it's no more the blackboard teaching. I'm looking at possibility of using presentations, right? And this has become very better because we are trying to use interactive whiteboards, right? So interactive whiteboards in the sense, and there we are trying to say our way of teaching is happy for the student, and since it is happy for the student, we say that we have tried to make the quality of teaching to be better. Right? This is the third. Contents, right? As a teacher, and you're trying to bring in quality to your teaching, how are you measuring the outcomes of your teaching? So outcomes of the teaching, somebody would say, I'm a teacher, so naturally my feedback is good. That's one way. The other way, people would say that, okay, my student has some sort of programming competitions, right? And this make sure that whatever I brought to the student is very good and acceptable because the student has tried to think more by participating in competitions. This is where people say they participate in higher teaching can also result in some form of a product, right? Wherein the product can be becoming a sellable product also, so that it can bring some sort of business value to the concepts. I would also suggest would be okay, I teach one subject, I'm trying to bring some sort of a collaborator to the subject, right? So there's some person who is working with IIT or working with, I'm trying to bring in, okay, the teacher is no more a teacher as what you are. You are actually having a teacher who is a collaborator from the other side. So there is a possibility for a higher level thinking that may come to the student. This teaching is fine, but there could be another person also who can try to give one more thinking to the subject. It is not expected in all the subjects, but it could be possible, right? So the higher level thinking that we want to bring in is becoming better and better. And now you can see students who would say, okay, I want to have 60 to 70% of classes, and 20% I want to have more of a practical learning, right? I would say, okay, when I started studying in my school, and I would say, I know what is value-based education. get people subject called as moral education. That moral education textbook has taught people, they would say, everything is becoming an activity-based learning. Together with an activity, right? The student is trying to have a thinking, and the improvement in thinking is better. And as a result, the student says the student has a higher value education because it cannot be adopted for all the subjects. But however it is possible, you can try to see practical learning. So this, I'm leaving it as a question to the people, because each one of try to bring quality learning to my students when I'm trying to teach. Okay. Ma'am, now we can project our presentation. Madam, am I audible?
Sir? Sir?
Yeah. Now can we project our
Yeah,
presentation?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, please. Can you project it? Okay. Meanwhile, if this is more of an interactive session, I believe, right? This topic. Post questions also in the chat box, or you can also give your experiences.
Participants who are willing to ask something, or if you have any doubts, you can ask.
Yeah, it's more of an experiential session. So you can also post questions. You can also share your experience. Yeah. Madam, are you sharing the screen presentation, please?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. Any cost side, Ibrahim sir. Okay. Quality is no be compromised at any cost. Yeah, okay, I agree. It is one word that we have to bring in, irrespective of the audience. I would always say this: if I have 60 students in my class, okay, and that 20 students become 10 students in a couple of classes, then I would say I have tried to bring in some sort of quality in teaching to my students. I hope, Said sir, are you agreeing with this? You have some points? Yeah, yes, yes. Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging, sir, Said sir. Okay. So before this presentation comes up, I think presentation is coming up. I would also try to say to the audience what I am trying to work with actually. So my research is completely into area of video processing, deep learning concepts. So I work on verticals of trying to bring in products which are more towards societal living. For example, if somebody says, I want to have a solution for monitoring people who are in the room, and I want to make sure that they're they are not falling down. So then that case, I would say that okay, I would try to bring in a product. So that's called as fault detection problem. Right. Ma'am, I think you have shared the screen. Can we go with like this, or are you opening it separately, ma'am?
So we can.
Okay, madam, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, madam, I think I will share the screen and continue. I think I will do it from the browser also, not a problem. If you're going to open it in the browser, fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine, fine. I'll just share the screen. Okay, fine. So the presentation topic is systematic changes for enhancing the quality of higher education. So the agenda that I have looked at for discussing for today is what is meant by higher education. The next is what are the standards that we have set by heard from NAC for higher education. And third is, if we are as teachers, how are we going to do some sort of changes or bring in some sort of thought process in doing teaching process so that the higher education that we are trying to provide to the students is improved in overall. Okay, so this is the three verticals that we will discuss. Madam, am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Fine. Okay. Now,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Thank you. The Department of Higher Education, right, is generally responsible for overall development of the basic infrastructure of higher education sector, both in terms of policy and planning, right? So what do they generally do is the department has a planned development process through which they try to understand how can education be provided to a different category of people across India and make sure that the quality of the education is also enforced. And Department of Higher Education generally takes care of understanding the process as a continuous process by looking at what is happening in universities outside India also. So, what is the vision, mission, and objectives and functions of the department? So, the vision they are suggesting is they want to realize India's human resource potential to its fullest in the higher education sector with equity and inclusion. That means it is understood that every individual who is part of the education sector, it could be teachers or it could be people who are trying to give some sort of knowledge learning in labs, everybody is responsible to make sure that there is a high level of intellectual input given to the students. So this is what they are trying to describe under the vision statement. The mission statement is to provide greater opportunities of access to higher education with equity to all eligible persons and in particular to the vulnerable sections. Generally, if you talk about what a vulnerable section is, it means people who are underprivileged in terms of their economy, or it means people who are not aware of having a good education, right? For example, if somebody says an understanding that a vulnerable society could be somebody who is not in a financially good situation, somebody who is staying in a remote place, somebody who says, no, I am staying in a remote tribal area. I do not have access to education at all. So to such people also, they want to give more and more opportunity, right? And in that process, what has happened is, since we are all in education sector, you should also understand there are separate ministries for taking care of it. For example, if you look at the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, right? This is a ministry from Government of India which takes care of providing education or technology or facilities or services to tribes. And in that process, the vision from Prime Minister is also to understand how education can be provided to students. Now, it doesn't directly go into the colleges, it also goes into the schools, right? For example, if you look at Kendra Vidyalaya, right, and I say tribal school, you can see here there are now new initiatives from Kendra Vidyalaya also to start schools for the tribal students. So in your process, what is happening right now is the process of education is not only for students who are in the higher sector, it is also for people who are in the vulnerable sections. Right? That is the meaning of this first point. Second, expand access by supporting existential institutions, establishing new institutions, supporting state governments and non-government organizations or civil society to supplement public effort aimed at removing regional or other imbalances that exist as at present. Right. So people at any place should be able to access education. That technology is playing a very vital role. Third is initiate policies and programs for strengthening research and innovations and encourage institutions, public or private, to engage in stretching the frontiers of knowledge. Right. This is one place. Doing research on one side is always very good as teachers, but creating innovations from research is also very much important. Right. So there, if you say, I would like to bring in an innovation as part of my social education or something, then people can always look at organizations like this. Social research, right? So here you can always look at Indian Council of Social Science Research, which actually gives calls for creating innovations, right? So they also have research institutes and research centers. With them also you can partner from the institute side and you can try to submit proposals, and that proposals will also be funded as part of your grant. So that is how I'm looking at this point. Perceptions of point will vary, but the outcome is, can we use research and innovation together, right, as part of the improvement to the society. The next is promote the quality of higher education by investing in infrastructure and faculty, promoting academic reforms, improving governance, and institutional restructuring towards the inclusion of hitherto deprived communities. This again goes directly with the first statement, where community of education is not only to limited people, it is across people, whoever wants to have education. Now, the objectives from the higher education sector that is being projected is they want to have the increase of enrollment ratio to higher education has to be increased year-wise. Now, we have statistics saying that in 2020, the higher education has improved to 30%. Now, if you go to the net and see statistics of higher education in India, they would give you the results of statistic of higher education in India, and the results are available in the website from the government website itself, education.gov.in, right? And here you can see a very interesting article that's published in April 2022, right? This article, right, says that the average factor of with respect to the higher education, right, has increased in the last 2 years, right? Even across the pandemic, we do not have a problem with the number of people enrolling for the higher education. And there, the new policy, which everybody is starting to hear right now, which is the national education policy, which is approved by the central government, is also in focus, right? So here, if you see the statistics, it says the amount of universities, colleges, their facilities, infrastructure has improved over the last set of years, right? And this is very interesting for all of us to know. The number of institutions has expanded by 400% since 2001. See the growth. It's not 10, 20 like that. It's increased more than 400% since 2001. So the capacity is growing rapidly to serve India's large youth population and growing college-aged cohort, right? So it's very simple to say the institutions has grown larger and larger, right? Okay. And every year, as every institution has a ranking, and when the ranking institutions comes into the list. Let's not look at the ranking process. So the keywords that I'm trying to bring for you in the article is for you to understand that there is a growing concern for education among institutions becoming a competition for serving to the society. Okay. Second one, if you can see, to expand institutional base of higher education, including technical, professional, and vocational education, by creating additional capacity in increasing institutions, by establishing new institutions and incentivizing state governments and non-governmental organizations or civil society. Here, how I look at this is the amount of funding that is given to the government at the state level to improve the state level infrastructure at the institutions part, right? This is only a policy. This we cannot comment anything here. The next is to provide opportunities for higher education to socially deprived communities and remove disparities by promoting the inclusion of women, minorities, and differently abled persons, right? See, generally, the concept of education is now not becoming a problem for people, right? Okay, people can actually access facilities. Only thing is, whenever people are having difficulties in getting some sort of education, there is always a possibility for them to get some sort of facilities for sponsorships, right? For example, if you go to the UGC schemes, okay, for students in higher education. I'm just trying to take links parallelly because it's easy for you to also understand, okay, how do you look at this next? Here you can see here the different schemes that are implemented for the different category of institutions, right? Not only to the students, but also for the teachers, right? It could be right from the colleges, or it could be right down to the construction of hostels. There are different schemes and there are different websites for each of it on the right side. Okay. So now it is understood that the facilities can be improved over the time, right? Next is to remove regional imbalances in access to higher education by setting up institutions in unnerved and unserved areas. This is almost a answer from everybody, because today people will say wherever I go I see a college, wherever I go I see at least a higher education school facility being provided. So thanks to the government of India for making the facilities for us. The next is to enhance plan support for infrastructure and faculty development in institutions of higher learning, and to attract talent towards careers in teaching and research, right? The AICT has been doing this as a continuous process, right? For example, the AICT programs that we have right now, right, especially the program that talks about holistic learning, right? That's now part of all the institutions, right? People have, right? So webinars that are launched as part of holistic and multidisciplinary education is one good initiative that you can actually see for an example for this. Then next one here is to create conditions and knowledge generation through improved research facilities in institutions and colleges. This we can point at many organizations that are in front of us, and it's our duty to reach to the organizations to ask what facility can you provide. For example, people can access organizations which could be like this: Indian Council of Forest Research and Education, right? If somebody is looking at the possibility of working with something with forest department, where you would like to do some research, get some sort of facilities, funding also, you can actually do a joint research. right? So this is how I'm looking at this point. Facilities that we would like to create can be created again in collaborations with people outside. Then to promote collaboration with international community, foreign governments, universities, institutions, and regional and international institutions for the advancement of universal knowledge and IPR, right? This IPR is always taken at two aspects. One, people will say, I've got an patent. Somebody would say, I've got a patent which has got granted, right? So now we have got patent grants that is now available, right? So people can actually go through and start seeing, okay, how do you file a patent, all that. But here there is an option for you to file patent grant with international faculties. Okay, this is I think I'm trying to give it as information to the people. You can always file an international patent grant. The advantage would be is like if there is an international patent grant filed where the member of your patent application is a member from a university in abroad, the time for reviewing is little bit faster, right? I'm not saying you'll get the patent, but I'm saying that you will at least know the results little faster if you're filing a patent where the member on the other side is from another country, right? Okay, so that's one thing that I would try to point at this point. People can actually look at possibilities of patent, right? And next is any agency, if you talk about, like let's take, you say, Department of Science and Technology, right, which everybody looks at, right? So in this, if you go and see the calls that comes up, call for proposals that comes up, you can see calls coming up for people who are trying to look at calls with respect to international association also, right? You can see calls where the calls are saying, okay, you can actually look at association with Indo UK, like that, right? So the international call proposals is what you should look at from here. Promote development of Indian languages. I think that is now slightly becoming a practice, right? For example, if you see the engineering syllabus that we have now, government is having a policy to introduce Tamil as part of teaching, right? Government is also looking at possibilities to have awareness of Tamil as a subject also in teaching, right? So that's one thing that started and it's going on. Then to promote autonomy, innovations, and academic reforms in institutions of higher learning. So there, I think the new NEP policy, right, is going to play a vital role in this point to promote autonomy, innovations, academic reforms in institutions of higher learning. Next is to undertake institutional restructuring for improving efficiency, relevance, and creativity in higher education. When you say restructuring, how I would actually look at restructuring at the institution level is the way we try to teach, the way we try to give contents to the students, the way we try to deliver the technical aspects to the students can be more at an activity level, right? Rather than saying, okay, I'm just doing a conventional whiteboard teaching alone. I think everybody does it. But is it really interesting to say always, I will every time use a presentation, will I use a videos like that? That again depends on the teacher. Okay, but I'm looking at restructuring is more from the content delivery model, and that we have a very big role as teachers. In any higher education segment, students are the largest group in higher education systems, and they have the highest voice to give their comments, right? Okay. Now, where is all it's happening? If you go and see now, if you go to any social media, right? You say Facebook, for example, and you say, "Will is there a portal which speaks about student views, right, on colleges, right?" Somebody would say, yes, there is something, right? Okay, so there is websites which are there for Facebooks, which people, students post their reviews about the colleges. So the social media is directly or indirectly playing a vital role to reflect the college aspects. So there, students have a big stake. Students are quite well informed, committed, participative, motivated, and curious. This is what I would like to say. this one, how I would actually look at the student contributions would be like this. For example, if I would like to say, okay, my class subject has to be better, I would actually think, okay, what was the feedback given by the student during last time? Okay, maybe I would have thought or somebody would have thought, but what was the feedback given, right? And the next is what sort of an suggestion, right? Okay, has been given by the alumni, right? For the same subject. Suppose I'm teaching a subject, maybe the alumni would have said, okay, we expected this, but we didn't get it. Okay, so this two things is what I'm seeing as possibilities. Could be a lot of other options, but these two things I'm seeing as lot of possibilities. One, a feedback given by the student during the last time, and second is a suggestion that is given by the alumni also can be considered, because that can become very vital feedback for us to understand. The students whom we teach will be very committed, will be listening to classes, and will be curious to listen to the sessions. The next is the several dimensions of student participation often surpass the four walls of the education and other academic frontiers, following the trend that induces or obliges the institutions to open up to the society. Right? It is understood from my side as something like this. Students should not be restricting their learning only to the classrooms. They should also go out of the classrooms to start understanding how teaching can become better. So every institution now have started following policies. For example, if you look at Amrita, the educational system has a live-in lab concept where people say that we can actually be part of things which are needed for the society. The student can actually go around to a particular place, can actually work on some projects which is needed by the society, and that is being again taken back as part of a credit score for the system. So Amrita University looks at this as a very experiential learning. So we have a concept of living labs. The same thing somebody can actually adopt it in the system with their policies in their board of studies by bringing subjects which can be a zero credit also, because student will assume that okay, all subjects are theory, but this subject is not a theory one, right? So that is one thing that I would suggest to the people. So the student participation can be improved by assuming that we can have options for the student to say you're not going to learn only within your classroom. You can always go outside the classroom, but be participative and come back, right? And this is not only in India. You go outside India also, they would say that their classes are not only the classrooms. They always have subjects where they do some sort of a societal interaction as part of their subjects. Okay. Then the next one, of late, the world over, there's a wide and positive attitude towards increased student influence in higher education governance, including the role of student activism in social changes. So when we say that we have taught a student, we are saying that the student has graduated with a degree, the student is having 9 CGPA, 8 CGPA, 7 CGPA, like that. But can that student actually be part of something which is part of a social relevance to the system? So that is something which actually can become a continuous process. Now, when you look at the stakeholders of the system, educational system here, we have government, we have institutions. Every institution has a board of management. We have the academic world. The academic world is teachers and others. What is this others? I would say is people who are participating in the lab teaching, people who are part of lab assistants, somebody who is supporting us in carrying out the experiments. All of them can be assumed to be part of the academic world. The next is students. The next is employers, right, who hire us. And next is the society at large. The society is actually the people with whom we are trying to interact every time. Okay. Now, this is how NAC is trying to look at its participation in education. As far as NAC is concerned, it says its primary role is to have an assessment and accreditation of higher education institutions on a set of criteria and key indicators. That is where we have our NAC documents, which we go through and we submit to say our institution has a good accreditation value or not, right? The next, it promotes internationalization of quality sustenance and quality assurance process within the organization. So this is where IQAC has a very major role, because they watch what are the policies that are adopted by the NAC from time to time. I think you have a session today on from the IQAC member from Vellalar College also talking to you about how do they enforce the IQAC policies. Now the NAC's mission is, that means over the time, what the NAC's mission is like this, to say quality is not a factor, but they want to bring awareness of quality among the stakeholders. So who are the stakeholders? As we just now told you, the stakeholders are the government, institution, academic world, students, employers, society, right? So they want to bring a quality awareness to all these people and bring in a consciousness that the participants of the institution, especially the students, teachers, parents, managers, administrators, and public, they have a very big role in enforcing quality, right? The next is to promote participatory management practices, including student participation. Here, how do I see this is, if you take 15 years back, okay, I'm not talking about today, 15 years back, if you ask, what was the student's involvement, right? A teacher will say, the student comes to class, the teacher says, I'm informing the student the marks. The student says, okay, these are the suggestions. Maybe we would write a written feedback. But now what has happened is, the students are part of the feedback system in the continuous process. That is one thing that I see as a student participation. That means one time a semester, two times, three times a semester, the student feedback is part of the teaching. The second thing is, the student is actively part of a lot of clubs, and through the clubs also, they try to bring in an experiential teaching. What I'm trying to say is, let's say I teach a computer science subject, and that subject actually has a set of concepts, but there is a tool which has come recently, let's take 2 months back, and that is not there in the subject. Maybe the student club can actually organize it as a workshop, and in a way, the group of students whom I'm teaching also knows that tool. That is how you can assume the student participation. Third, which I'm seeing it as a process, is students becoming part of board of studies. Right, 15, 16 years back, I have not seen. Now it's not like that. Students are part of board of studies. Students actually involve themselves and say, okay, this is the changes that I would like to have in the curriculum. And next is the policies that are adopted at the institution level to say we have a department committees like DAC, where in the DAC committee, once in a time, the DAC committee has the student, has a parent also as participant, and they try to give suggestions on how the subjects can be improved or what could be done with the subject to make it interesting to the students, right? Okay, so that's where I'm seeing student participation as a continuous process, and this student participation is increasing again and again in different factors. So NAC's mission is to promote participatory management practices, including student participation. So the expected outcome is, can I actually have increase in quality, right, for the institution? So the quality enhancement of the institution is the focus from the NAC. Now, in this process, this diagram would give us inputs. If you can see here, students are the central focus in any learning, right? And they participate in courses, programs, and they're part of institutions, right? So they build in the support part. So the support could be trying to help us to say the institution, is having a transition from weak to strong because students are the biggest strength, right? Now, in this process, you can try to have social experiences, academic experiences, right? And the institution itself has got its own experiences, and the psychology of the individuals, right, has to be considered, and what are the aspirations also has to be considered. This is very important. A student says, I want to join into a mechanical department, but the student says, okay, I also want to learn computer science. We suggest, okay, we have engineering in mechanical with minor in computer science. Okay, so that is one way where we are trying to bring in the aspiration of the student and say, okay, you have a course, but that course will actually look at mechanical or also computer science together, right? So this is something that I'm seeing it as a change with respect to this factor, pre-entry attributes and aspirations. So the minor courses that are coming up now will surely satisfy a large amount of audience who would like to do interdisciplinary subjects. The next is the lab skills, right? And the problems that you try to solve can be related to the society, and what are your goals and what are your decisions that you take with respect to the factors with which you joined into the institution is very important, right? So this is something which is already there from the uh, government document. So I'm just sharing it. So they have conducted a statistics for a pilot set of students. So statistics is projected in a different way about how they perceive. So here statistics is shown for with respect to women, and statistics says with respect to men. As you can see here, it's low for women and it's higher for men here. And this one is again a classification based on the education that the people take from the women category at UG, PG, and at research. Okay. And next one that you can see here is with respect to men. Again, category wise with respect to UG, PG, and next is research. This is across the different departments, right? Okay, so what is a percentage of inputs that has been received from different categories like arts, commerce, law, management, science, social, education, and next is others. This is one of the pilot study that's been conducted, and from that they have actually tried to understand there could be three themes with which you can try to look at the aspects of NAC. One is my understanding on quality. The next is students' views on feedback mechanisms for quality enhancement. Third is students' participation in institutional quality assessment by NAC. Right. So here the answers are students generally understand what is the concept of quality. Right. Now the students' responses with respect to qualities, they try to come back with some sort of feedbacks and say, okay, all this I need for the subject. Because of this, I say there's a quality in teaching, and in overall, there's a quality in my institution part of teaching. Theme 2 is students' views on feedback mechanisms for quality enhancement. So here, students' understanding is there on what is feedback mechanism, and this becomes an institutional feedback, right? So there are generally two feedbacks that are generally taken at institutes level. One is they take from the teachers, right? One they take from the students, and they also collect from the students the feedback related to the institute, whether any facility is required, any sort of infrastructure requirement is required, or to teach. Yeah, for example, the student says, I would like to have a whiteboard, which is an interactive whiteboard through which I can listen and participate better. So that's also part of feedback. Third is student participation in institutional quality assessment by NAC. So how do we do this, right? See, as far as accreditation is concerned, it is not going to happen just by teachers. So students have to have awareness, right? So as part of accreditation, let's take we go from the subject level. Each one of us will say my subject falls into a theory course or a lab course or a lab-based course. Further from there, you would say I have a component in assessment. Then you would say I've got COs, which is course outcomes. Then you would say we have got program outcomes. Then you would say we have program specific outcomes. So you do all of this in teaching, but you also inform the student that this course has got COs. And now when you give your question paper, you say to the students that, see, come on, this is CO1. So this falls under quiz 1. Quiz 2 covers CO2 and 3, and quiz 3 covers CO4 and 5. So you are indirectly making the student to be aware that you are not just teaching the subject, but in turn, you are trying to make sure that your subject level teaching is directly connected to the practices as part of the national governing bodies. So the national governing bodies that we are talking about here is a NAC, for example, right? Okay. So the student is also concerned, right? So in the process, when NAC comes for accreditation to the institute, then the student is also having an awareness why the teacher has followed an educational teaching wherein the teacher has said something about COs, POs, PSOs, how it has been attained, how well has the student been happy with the respect to the teaching, is also assessed by using the attainment process, right? So now you have the second answer to your teaching. One answer is feedback, and second answer is the attainment that we have from the CO process. So this is the third theme. So they have looked at three themes in this survey. One is my quality aspects. Second, student views on feedback and the mechanism for quality improvement. Third, student participation in quality assessment by NAC. Okay, all these three has been taken into factor, and based on it, this is the overall analysis in the survey. The overall analysis says that the data confirms that the students were more comfortable with 1 and 2 rather than 3, right? So 1 and 2 is what? I know what is quality. I know to give feedback, right, for improving the quality. But the third one is still is a challenging one. The student is not getting a very good awareness, okay, about the policies from NAC and how it is being followed in the process of teaching, right? So this is just from one of the surveys that is projected. Then highest areas of expectations were the quality of teaching and the teachers, the quality of teaching ambience, and the quality of curriculum, including inclusion of interdisciplinary areas. This is something which each one of us is trying to suggest in the board of studies, right? We are saying, okay, you try to teach a subject, that's okay. But rather than the expertise of the course, it may be computer science, mechanical, accounting, like that, how are you bringing in other department courses also, right? So that is where Government of India has already enforced certain subjects as part of Indian Constitution as one of the subject for students to get awareness. But other than that, can we bring in some subjects from the other departments which will promote interdisciplinary studies? Okay, so here some institutions, they bring in cultural education together with the teaching. So that's again an example of interdisciplinary area. The next is, it was evident that NAC's role, purpose, and the need for accreditation with institutions was hardly known to the students, indicating that the more awareness is indicated on these aspects. This is evident from because the survey says the student is more comfortable with theme 1 and theme 2, but not comfortable with theme 3, right? So this is the first analysis points. The second analysis points says like this: to arrive at a fair judgment of the quality of education, right, we need to make sure that there is a social responsibility, right, by bringing in a good quality education. And when you say quality, again, we are trying to say we will bring quality, but the accreditation committees expects to have a quality assurance. That means a student joins this institution, X or Y, what sort of an assurance the student will get in terms of quality, right? So that is very important. And this is a continuous process. And next is structured feedback questionnaires together with oral responses of the students are invaluable inputs to the quality enhancement activities of higher education process. So every institution has a feedback questionnaire that we give to the students, and we also ask them to give some sort of oral feedback, and that we try to take it to the DAC process also. So this is what we are trying to do it, and all of us as teachers are trying to do. We are trying to have the concepts taught. We are trying to bring some lot of practical skills to the students, right? And rather than moving just with student process, we are also trying to make sure that we are trying to bring in a value education to the students. That is why AICT is trying to have possibilities to the students, saying that they should have value education also as part of the curriculum. So this is one statement which is pitched in most of the time for whenever there is discussions on educational teaching. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to try and find a successful outcome acceptable to all that counts. So this is one thing every teacher does. If you ask me, I would say like that. As I started my session, I said, okay, I have 65 students. I want to make all my 65 students happy in my class. So whether the topic is easy, tough, but still the student should say at the end of the course, okay, I carried something from this course which I find it interesting, right? The student should not say it was a boring subject at the end of the semester. Saying boring in the beginning, middle is sometimes usual, right? Or in one of the two classes is usual. But how are you going to bring in all the students together to say, I learned something from this subject after listening to the teacher? So that's one thing, that's a challenge for every teacher. So this sentence, I would always find it as the sentence for the teachers. It is a courage to try and find a successful outcome acceptable to all that counts. So here I am trying to bring in students as my perception of understanding. This is my understanding here. Next is, people actually talk about teaching in different forms, right? People say, okay, I try to bring teaching either by bringing in contents to my classes. So everybody says I try to go for a PowerPoint presentation. That's something which people like. Then there is always possibility for you to have some sort of a video recording to the subjects that you teach, right? This is something which is now coming up as a good input to the students. So somebody says, I am trying to have a content I would like to teach, then I can teach in my class. I would also make a video recording and I will give it to the students. If they want, they can learn through the video recording also. So it is like an additional content that I'm trying to make sure, right? The advantage, what I would see would be is like in a process of doing it, a teacher feels confident because the teacher is communicating a content which is live, which is recorded. A teacher as such would try to work on a proper script, right? Because you cannot just walk through the slides and talk, right? You would actually make a script. If you feel you cannot talk much, you try to bring as much of examples to the slides and make things understandable to the student. So the content preparation would become better when there's a script that comes up. And a very important thing, what I would always assume is, I would say anytime the student can actually play back the content, right? For example, a student is learning a topic on balance sheet in accounts. The student has listened in the class very well, but the student is now just going inside the exam hall. Just 5 minutes before, the student has a doubt, okay, how did I get my last table value? Recalls is not getting, and no friend is next to the student to teach before entering the exam hall. Maybe the student would try to play the video recording, would understand, okay, the teacher would have said, okay, I am applying this formula here Because of this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 became 6, 2, 1, 2. Now the student will get okay, fine. So it's like you are carrying one more content to the student to make sure that okay, you are not left alone in teaching. I have a video recording of my course that is also going to be with you to say and understand the concepts in a more better manner. So this is something which I always suggest. Maybe if, I know it's a tough process of making content, but it can always become a continuous process if you start adopting in your courses. Okay, this is the first one. So next is the blended learning is something which people talk about today's education, and this is taken in different ways. Like if you talk about blended learning keyword in the internet, okay, they would actually say technology mediated instruction, web enabled instruction, or a mixed mode instruction, right, is a definition that you see for something called as blended learning. But today, everybody who teaches always try to go for a blended learning, right? It means that when you want to teach a subject, we try to bring in some tools. It can be maths also, people are using tools, right? Accounts also, they use some computer science tools. Everybody is trying to use some tools. So in your process, you are trying to use technology for teaching the subject. Or somebody would try to use something from the internet, right? You would say any content that you refer today, you search, you are seeing through the internet, right? Because internet is giving you a lot of contents which you take, but it will take a lot of time to prepare, right? So third is a mixed mode instruction. So this mixed mode instruction, how I would actually say is like somebody wants to teach a subject, okay, teach for 15 minutes, bring a quiz. The quiz can be an online quiz. The student types an answer. The software can say this was the right answer, this was a wrong answer, right? Rather than the teacher. So it's a mixed mode instruction here. So that's what is blended learning is. So this is becoming very popular nowadays. So blended learning is almost part of every educational system. And it's not in terms of facilities saying I have a whiteboard facility like that. It is also to say that the content that you deliver has followed through a blended learning practice. The next is the presentation that you make, right? So it's nothing to advise, but as teachers, we also would try to be happy to say all my presentations have a common template, right? It has a logo. It has got something called as an agenda of topics. It can also have some sort of contents, which could be examples like that. And some presentations, even I have been very much surprised to see, right? They actually write it in a paper neatly with different colors, right? And then they take a screenshot and put it in the slide. So it's something like a student is carrying a notebook of handwritten notes, right? So that also could be a presentation model which people can think of. Then the online videos that you can actually make for teaching is also an example. Then the materials that you make could also be better. It is one way you can make a PPT, or you can make a Word, you can make a PDF. Give the content back to the student to think on this. The next is the pedagogy in teaching. This is I need not say information for any teacher, because every teacher is a good teacher by him or herself, right? Okay, so everybody has a way to teach. Somebody says I'm teaching for 15 minutes. The person will say I taught for 30 minutes. Then I would give 10 minutes work. Somebody would say I teach for 20 minutes, give a work. Another 20 minutes I would give a work. Somebody would say, this is good, but I cannot follow this in every class, because maybe it is in the afternoon. The student may be very tired. They would actually suggest the other way. Okay, so this is the respect to the pedagogy in teaching. So each one can have your own pedagogy in teaching to the students. Next is what I usually suggest everywhere is like improving the way of interaction of a teaching or the subject can also be better when you try to bring in a proper documents, right? Okay, for example, any blended course that you talk about, you can actually try to have a case study, for example. I'm just showing a small case study example. This is one of the sample. Maybe you can refine it as better as you want. So let's take you teach a subject. Let's take its networks. You give a title for the application for the student, right? And you ask the student to fill in their roll numbers, name. So each one will have a roll number and name. And here as such, you can ask the student to be very specific with the contribution. Somebody says, I just did only introduction. The student can say, I did only introduction, right? Somebody says, no, I didn't do introduction alone. I did something more. Then the person can go and say, I did introduction. I will also do one more where I wrote conclusion also. Okay. So like this, people can actually ask the students to say what is their contribution in the case study. Because when you ask a student as a group to present, everybody will say I did everything. But rather you ask the student to type, the student is very clear. And it is very easy for us to say to the student in the beginning itself, no, this looks very simple, right? Compared to some other student in the same group. This is one way where you can improvise your answers or interaction with the student. The next is you can ask a student with respect to a particular topic, why do you need to look at that particular topic, right? That is something which people will be asking. The next, people can ask, how does it work in real time, right? For example, let's take, I would like to design a coffee vending machine, right? Then I can ask my student to say, okay, you want to make a coffee vending machine. If you would like to make a coffee vending machine, how will your coffee vending machine look like? So people will go onto the internet and they'll go and say, okay, how a coffee vending machine works, right? So this is next. Then next you can ask the student, okay, if it is going to be technology enabled, you can ask the student, okay, what is the software, what is the hardware, what is the language that they're going to use, okay. And in the process, what will happen is the student will actually go around the facility. For example, you ask the student, what is the server you're going to use? The student will go to the lab admin of the college and ask, okay, what is the server that is there in the college? So it's a way where you are trying to make the student to search for information to fill and hear, right? Then after that, you can ask the student to explain the entire case study, whatever they are doing. And if you have any measures that you would like to measure from the product, the measures can be presented, formulas can be presented, because anything has a measure to be done. It is physics, chemistry, accounts. I'm not talking about science and English, but rest of all the subjects can have some measures when they work on. So what are the measures? What are the relevance of the measures to the particular product? Then there can be an architecture diagram, right, which you can ask the student to work. Then you can ask the student to place some screenshots. This is very important, right? This actually prevents the student from copying. You ask a student to write down something related to the particular case study or activity that you're doing in their handwriting, right? They cannot copy somebody's, right? They'll take a screenshot and put. So this will make sure that, okay, student is working with you. Then ask the student to develop the same application using your tools or technologies, whatever you would like to do here. So when you do like this, it means that you are making the student familiarizing about how to look at the subject from an application perspective, look at the subject from a social relevance perspective, look at the subject for the keywords. Maybe the student would have not listened in the class, but the student will be curious to go around and ask somebody, okay, what is the meaning of the keywords? And finally, it is an assessment to the student. So you are saying to the student, see, okay, kind of the first student did introduction and conclusion. Second student has done model design. The second student has developed the code, right? The second student has posted in the internet. Now you are itself saying a scale to the student, saying that the second student did a good work compared to the first student. So there it creates a competition among the students, and the student will try to improvise among the group. So this is something which usually I suggest to the people. So I think you'll be doing already, right? But if it can be done in your own way, in a more better manner, you can ask them to do it. And if it's a programming assessment course, now it is nothing stops. We always understand that all courses today, right, has been connected with, excuse me, Yeah. All courses today, right, has been connected with the internet in terms of publicizing and making sure that your work is a good work, right? So there, make it a systematic way saying that the all students who work with some sort of data, it can be statistics or anything, so they can actually go to Kaggle and they can actually post their own data sets, right? Whatever data set they have collected, they can actually post their own data set. It is not only for physics, chemistry like that. Any experiment somebody does, right? They can actually host it as their data set on their own, right? So you can actually host your data set also, right? When you look at problems. So you can ask the student to host their data sets. If somebody is looking at physics, they have done some data sets, host it on the internet, host it on the Kaggle. That will be giving an uniqueness for the student compared with some other student, right? Then next is, today it has become a practice. All lab experiments that is being done, okay, can be posted to the GitHub. So that we generally make it as a practice in our university. So whatever it is a lab course, when they do 10 experiments, they can go to GitHub and put it in the GitHub page. So the advantage is, after 2 years when they sit for placement, or after 5 years when they want to go for a next high level job, their GitHub code will say that that student has got a familiarity in the particular subject. Okay, so this is how I feel it as a possibility to bring quality in teaching to the student community. And in a process, when quality in teaching can be done, automatically the participatory involvement of the students is increasing, and slowly it will make sure that the institution standard increases. And in the process of making ourselves very clear, we look at a benchmarking. So we'll go back to NAC and say that yes, we are in stand with what the quality practices is suggested from NAC. So that's it from my side. And thank you so much for the opportunity being provided. Thanks to Dr. Tulkapiyar sir for giving me the opportunity, and thanks to another institutions also for accepting me to deliver a session as part of this NAC seminar. Thank you, ma'am. If there is any questions, I will take it up.
Yeah, there is one question in the chat box, sir. What is the difference
Yes,
between
what is the question?
DAC and PAQIC? How frequent to be
Okay,
organized? Who are the members?
difference between NAC and
DAC and
DAC, DAAC.
DAC. DAC and PAQIC.
DAC is Department Advisory Committee that we call it up, right, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
What is the other one that they are saying? Madam?
PAQIC.
EAQ.
Sir, if I am not audible, Tangavel sir, can you repeat the question?
It's Program Assessment and Quality Improvement Committee.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Program Assessment and Quality Improvement Committee.
Improvement
Yeah, okay.
committee.
See, okay. See, as far as the DAC is concerned, the Department Advisory Committee, what happens is this is generally convened as 2 times in a semester. Okay. One, in the beginning of the semester, once the course has started, to understand the course outcomes, course attainments, what was the pedagogy that was followed in the last time, are we going to bring in some changes, or if the feedback given by the last year, last iteration teachers, how are you going to accommodate in the teaching, will be discussed in the DAC. So primarily at the end of the DAC, what happens is the courses are approved, the pedagogy of teaching of courses, and the possibility of having the internal split-ups is all approved in the DAC part. Okay. And the DAC also convenes at the end of the semester to understand whatever was promised in the beginning of the semester, has it happened or not. For example, if you say that I will get a higher attainment in this course, because of getting a higher attainment, I am trying to bring in a new tool, or I am trying to bring in a new assessment pattern. How well has it helped to improve the attainment? Or, no, whatever has been done is not helped. So the DAC actually looks into the possibilities of suggesting what can be done for the next iteration to fulfill this gap. This is from DAC side, ma'am. Okay. As far as the PAQIC is concerned, we call it as a committee that is followed for the Program Assessment and Quality Improvement Committee, right? So generally, if you look at this committee here, they look at the improvement more from the factors from the student side. And the responsibility side, it actually goes from the continuous process as what we follow from the DAC. But here the feedback is taken, right, and will be assessed from the students level. And PAQIC generally is organized twice a year, right? So DAC will be done twice a semester, and PAQIC will be happening twice a year as a common practice actually. It's again to assess the academics. So if somebody is having a question, okay, whatever you have done from the DAC also, will you put it to the PAQIC? Yes, it will also put up, but the DAC has two convenings, as I told you, in the beginning of semester and the end of the semester. Whatever report that we prepare at the end of the semester, no, as suggestions, will be reviewed in the PAQIC committee. Madam?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Sir,
Maybe Ranaganathar sir has received.
yeah,
He will
sir,
he will be clear, right?
okay, fine. Any other questions?
No, sir, that was the only question.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity provided, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thanks to
sir.
each one of you for the patient listening.
Yeah, we are very blessed to have you among us, sir. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and thank you for supporting our mission. We hope to have you in future events. We wish you all success, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thanks to each one of you. Thank you all.
Participants, the next session will start at 2 o'clock. I request you to log in by 1:45. I'll post the feedback link. Kindly fill it.
Yes.